Hello and welcome. My name is Christopher Durham, and I'm the president of the Velocity Institute. This is my weekly opportunity to talk to all the cool people in the private brand industry. So, up next is one of our favorite people. He's visited with us many times, Doug Baker from FMI. Doug, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back, Chris. And that's a cool intro, by the way. That's
Oh,
pretty good.
thank you. I've got all kinds of bells and whistles to play with here. Doug, we always like to start and learn a little bit about you. If people haven't seen your videos before, just tell us about a little bit about Doug, your career, and how you got to FMI.
Yeah, sure. I started as a bagger at the age of 17. I had a nice career with Fry's Food Stores. Started with them before it became a part of Kroger. Moved over to Nabisco through the Kraft acquisition. Then I went to Albertsons in the Southwest Division to support their private brand program, and then on to Federated. Ran the sales team nationally before coming to FMI. And it will be 10 years in December that I've been at FMI. So it's
Wow. It seems like just yesterday.
seems like it was just yesterday.
Because I think, let's see, FMI was doing the event in Dallas right after you started, right? Or right before you started?
Right before I started. I think it was the last time they did it in Dallas. It was right before I started.
Yeah.
2 years after I got here was when we stopped doing the big show. Yeah, lots changed.
It's all changed for the better, though, so that's a good thing.
Is.
So tell us about FMI.
FMI is a trade association, the food industry association that represents retailers from single store operators up to large national, multinational like Ahold Delhaize, Amazon, Walmart, Target. We are vertically integrated, though. We also have manufacturing members, product supplier members who have voting rights and sit on the board. But we also have a large community of associate members, which include manufacturers who have not made that step to membership yet. And then any company that wants to work with either a retailer, wholesaler, or product manufacturers. There's a lot of really smart people that are a part of FMI that helps me help the industry and also helps us have conversations with our elected officials to make sure that we have responsible legislation and regulation in the United States.
Talk to me a little bit about how FMI and private brand, what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, so from an FMI perspective, that group, that community started in 2009. We just met just recently as a council again. There's about 35 members on the council. Again, retail, wholesale, product manufacturer, and any company that does business or supports those three. And we meet on a monthly basis. We talk about big issues that are facing the industry. We share best practices, we benchmark, we advocate. So whenever we're working on a big advocacy issue that requires some feedback from the industry, I reach out to the Private Brand Council and pull those fact-based pieces of information in to help us with our messaging. And that was the perfect example of that was during bioengineer. It was the work that and the information that the Private Brands Council shared with FM that was instrumental in influencing the government to give us an additional 12 months to execute bioengineered labor.
So you actually have lobbyists in Washington talking to the leaders, saying, hey, pay attention to us. Let me tell you about this.
Yeah, we work very closely with the FDA, the USDA, the FTC on the Hill. We have a townhouse that's right next to Capitol Hill because our offices are across the river in Arlington. So it just allows them a place to huddle. It also gives a place for our members to come and work if they're in town meeting with elected officials. They can use our townhouse to sit down and do some work in between meetings.
I know you've got the council and you guys just met. Was there any learnings that came out of that or themes that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say probably big three. There's really five. One of them, we have several subcommittees of the council. And so we've always had, or at least for the last 6 months, we've had a technical regulatory working group. And that group is really focused on any regulation that affects the package. What do we need to do in order to execute against that regulation? If we're still in comment period or we're in draft period and we can influence it, then that's where that group tries to influence. But four other things that really came out of it was a need to really focus on internal and external education and awareness. If you think about internally, there's a lot of turnover in the industry. And how can we better educate anybody in the industry, from a cashier at the front end of the register like I was at 17 to anybody that's supporting what is private brands, right? Somebody working on the front line of a private brand manufacturer. Why are private brands important? So we're working on a project around that to help educate those stakeholders. But then also, how do we give more education external and really make sure that consumers understand and students understand the benefits? I was having a great conversation with a cashier at Giant yesterday while I was shopping. I was bagging my own groceries and he thanked me, and I was like, sort of nostalgia. And he's like, "Oh, you're in the grocery business." I have been for 35 years, and it really got into a really interesting conversation on how little even an employee inside of a store understands the grocery industry. You've made a living off of it, and it's taking care of your family. And I've said, yeah, beyond belief. It was advice by my dad, and it's given me a wonderful life and put 2 daughters through college and allows us to live very comfortably. And I said, don't look just in the store. You should learn everything about the store, but look at all the companies that support a retailer, a brand, how you get the product to the store. And so it was funny. I think the people behind me were wishing I'd just leave, but he kept asking questions and I enjoyed talking. So that was a big one. Strategic sourcing. We have a lot of capacity issues. So how does offshoring, nearshoring, importing look and affect that? What are some different relationships can retailers have with their product manufacturing partners in order to help innovation and build capacity? So that's a really big one. ESG obviously is growing. You do a great sustainability summit. And so that's a big deal to these folks. And the one that's really concerning is recycle and all of the commitments that are out there, whether it be a retailer or a product manufacturer, CPG company. The commitments are so aggressive that there's no way that the supply chain can even support them. So how do we address that as an industry? How do we address that as a private brands industry so that we don't fall behind? Because we want to lead. We're given the permission by the consumer to lead, and we want to continue to do that. So how do we work towards that? And then obviously insights and trends. Every month we do an insights after hour. It's the last 15 minutes of our call. And so we like bringing research that's secondary research from other members in the council and just other companies in the industry, and make sure that these guys are staying up to speed on what's going on. So we're going to have members of the council that will sit in each one of those work streams and make sure that they're getting ROI for the time that they're committing to being on the council.
Was there any conversation about EPR?
Yeah, there was a little bit to a lesser extent, though. And obviously, RPET is the biggest issue right now today. Anything that affects the package, but that was still part of the conversation.
Yeah. I know at our sustainability summit in Austin, the whole conversation around plastic commitments was basically, if Walmart and Kroger actually implemented it, there's not enough. There's just not enough material to do it.
Yeah.
You'd have to find non-virgin
and the whole infrastructure in place to be able to get to a point where it can be, right? That's an issue. So there's so many things about this that we as an industry have to tackle. I'd almost like to flip it on its head and start with what's available. Food grade recyclable plastic. There's this much available. So that means how much of the industry can actually engage in that. Because we need to start.
Yeah, I want to flip it even more, because I think the focus on recycling, because it's easy to do all right. It's easy to put the logo on things. It's a very passive. I think we've got to get to a place where we say, we can't recycle our way out of this. It's simply impossible. The facilities, it doesn't exist. So we've got to do the other two things, reduce and reuse, right? So I think we've got to go hard into reduce. Now, what that means for every package is you're going to have to look at weight. You're going to have to look at extra packaging, but you could get rid of a lot of stuff that could correspondingly reduce cost as well. So
there's still a lot of areas that can be readjusted on the shelves if we adjusted our packaging sizes.
What does next year look like for you guys? Do you have anything exciting planned?
Well, yeah. Wow. It's like, where do you start? I don't want to say it's like playing whack-a-mole, but there's the proactive and the reactive. So proactively, we have 6 imperative issues that we continue to focus on, whether it be supply chain disruption, workforce, the evolving consumer, the changing marketplace and societal dynamics, the technology, the way technology is exploding today, and the potential uses in the industry of technology. It's really a project in itself, a full-time job in itself, just trying
Absolutely.
to keep your eye on the prize. Midwinter's coming up at the beginning of next year. We have our technology pitch competition going again that I've been running. We've got a good handful of companies, young companies that are just post revenue, that have proof of concept, that are pitching to be able to go to Midwinter. We're going to have 34 tech companies there from across the board, meeting with companies, with retailers. That's going to be a lot of fun. From a research standpoint, we did 41 pieces of research, and some are primary, some are secondary. We love working with partners, but 41. And everybody is thirsty to learn. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's having the time to actually sit down and learn. But a lot of exciting things, both proactive and reactive, that we know we're going to have to address. Inflation is continuing to be an issue. Unfortunately, theft continues to be an issue.
Yeah.
We need as an industry to come up with a better message, how we explain the impact of theft, stores, and the collateral damage of some of the things that the retailers are having to do to mitigate that theft. Because in the media today, it's really a mixed bag of, is it really as bad as it is? And understanding what the real number.
Speaking of the research, I know you just released the latest piece of your Power of Private Brand research.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. And then you have a webinar virtual event coming up involving that as well, right?
Yeah, so we do 2 pieces of research every year. One is always focused inward on the industry, and then the second one is focused outward on the consumer. This one is consumer focused. Its title is What's Ahead for Shoppers and Private Brands. And there's obviously growing momentum has been probably the biggest theme, which I think anybody in the private brand industry wouldn't go, wow, I didn't know that. Because whenever we see the economy struggle and people start to have to pinch pennies or get really smart with their dollars, we see private brands accelerate, and that's what we're feeling right now. Unfortunately, we were told on Sunday that fuel prices were going to drop precipitously, and that would have helped the economy. But when you wake up and you find out another country's been invaded by another country or a terrorist group, now you see fuel prices are going to go up even higher than they were before, which is going to keep that inflation high, and it's going to keep consumers having to focus on how do they stretch their dollar. Again, that's a good thing for private brands. The council is trying to work towards, when you ask a customer, one word, what do you think about private brands? And they say as good as, cheap, value. It's how do we get the word cheap out of there? That's not a measurement, right? Because I know what they mean by cheap. Cheap is it's less expensive. You hate to think the other cheap is it's cheap quality, but it's cheap, it's less expensive. But if that is a measure of success for the private brand industry, we're always going to be doing this with the economy. When the economy's down, we go up. When the economy's up, we go down. And so how do we move beyond that? So that's one of the things that they're really focused on. The one that was really, in my opinion, a key indicator as to the consumer's acceptance of private brand to lead is since 2016. In 2016, 35% of shoppers said they chose the store that they shop at based on the private brand.
Right.
This past year, 53%. So now over half of consumers literally pick a store based on their experience with the retailer's private brand. I think that's significant.
And I'll tell you what gets even more exciting. So we run a set of research every 2 years on natural and organic brands. So when you ask them, do you select Kroger based on simple truth? It goes to 75%. Because you're asking them about the brand they know, not about the amorphous group of private brands, right?
And I think there's such great metrics, right? And those reinforce that we are right on the cusp of we've been given permission to lead, right? So now that comes with a lot of responsibilities. right? It's all of the same things that they want from PepsiCo, they want from my private brand. We obviously are also, the report talks about the challenges to overcome. And it's how do we convert shoppers to heavy users? We spent a lot of time defining a heavy user last year and reinforcing that this year. It's getting a little bit more challenging to define because so many consumers are buying private brands, but it's how do we convert them from being just 1 week to the next, I buy, I don't buy, to being very consistent private brand shoppers, driving further trial. It's really a challenge these days, especially in this digital world, is how do we drive trial of private brands? So getting creative around those types of activities to do that. And then tracking how consumers' value perceptions are changing, right? So it's not just about price anymore. It's about a number of other things. It's about the health of the product. It's about the transparency of the product. It's about the transparency of the company. So it's staying up on top of those trends. So the report gets a lot of that feedback from the consumer, and the council spent a little bit of time this last week when we were together at our summit talking about how do we now respond to some of these requests by the consumers.
I know coming up, you have a virtual event, October 24th, where people can learn more about the research. So tell us about that event.
Yeah, it's a webinar, what we call digital seminars. Please, you're more than welcome. Go out to the FMI.org website. You can find it out there and register for it. Once you register the link, we obviously record all of them, so the recording will be made available to those folks that register. And it's going to be a conversation, really. Pam Ofrey with Wade Fern and Mark Coleman with Catania are the co-chairs of the council right now. They will be joining me and David Orgel, who's our moderator. And we're just going to talk about the findings and get some perspectives and think about what it is we just heard from the consumer and how should we respond to that. Is there a way to respond to it? And if there is, what are some ideas?
Makes sense. Perfect. All right. I always end with the same 5 questions, so you get to see what your answers are this time.
Okay.
Ready? So what's your favorite word?
What's my favorite word? Cooperation.
Good word. Question number 2, are you a more artistic or mathematic person?
Gosh, I'm probably going to say analytical. I like dealing with numbers, but I love getting out on the dance floor. So
That's fun. If you could share a meal with anyone, past or present, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Robin Williams.
That'd be fun.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't it? What a loss we had as a country, as a society. And I hate the fact that he was in that kind of pain before he left us, because he brought so many of us joy anytime we saw him.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant mind. And I think we need a little bit of Robin Williams right now in the world.
I absolutely agree with that one. What profession other than your own would you have liked to have attempted?
I stick with professional bowler, man.
I remember, yeah.
I love it. I love bowling. I grew up in it. You hang out with some of the oldie but goodies, Earl Anthony and Wayne Zahn and Guppy Troop and stuff like that. It's just so, I would have loved to have been, I probably would have had to have a job by now, because you don't stay that long on it.
You'd have no rotator cuff by now.
Probably. So I might still be right back where I'm at, but I would love to have had at least a short stint on the PBA tour.
You could always join the professional picket ball circuit, or the guys throwing bean bags at things. And
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, and finally, number 5, if you could speak to yourself when you began your career, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh my goodness. Listen, talk less, listen more. That'd be the biggest thing there's so much intelligence out there. And at such a young age, I was thinking about this the other day, Chris, and I don't even know why I was in preparation for this. I didn't even know you were going to ask me that, but it's one word. And now that I'm the age I am, and you start feeling the age and you start seeing the things that you might have done differently, we are just so convinced as a young adult that we're invincible, that nobody can teach us anything, that we're going to go out and blaze a new trail. We're going to do it differently. And what I've seen over and over again is that you don't do it differently. You might get there at a different time or a different path, but a lot of our the way we go about life, the way we raise our families, the way we move from inner city to suburbs, the way we choose our jobs, the vacations. You listen to your parents talk and they're so similar. So that would be the biggest thing, is just stop talking and listen for a little bit.
All right, so we're to the end, which means I get to plug a couple of things. Always fun. Make sure to go and register for the FMI private brand digital seminar. Digital seminar. I'll put a link to it down below, but it's fmi.org, so it's pretty easy. Also, we have our annual Bold Bash, which is the Monday night of PLMA on the 13th of November in Chicago, actually in Rosemont, directly across from the convention center at King's Entertainment and Bowling. So hipster kind of beer hall place. Lots of fun. We had a couple hundred people last year. It's completely free. Go to velocityinstitute.org and register, mostly so we know how much beer and food to order, but please do that. Following that, in December, we'll close out the year with our State of the Industry virtual event, absolutely free as well. We're fielding research about sentiment and state of the industry. Damon will speak. Catalina will talk about what's going on in the private brand world, and we'll have a panel. So a tight 2 hours of exciting stuff. So please register for that as well. It's completely free. Thank you very much, Doug. It's been great to talk to you again.
It's always good catching up with you, Chris. Take care.